Welcome to the Notion of Life series, in which we are building the ultimate Notion system that helps you get more result with less effort. In today's video, we are going to cover the basics of Notion. Notion profiles itself as the all-in-one workspace, and quite frankly, that is exactly what it is. It uses a unique blend of blocks, interactive pages, and databases to allow users to build personalized systems that solve their specific problems. Notion is a very popular product on the cutting edge of the no-code frontier. They've been valued at over $10 billion, have over 30 million users, and are used by some of the biggest companies in the world. You can get a decent understanding of how the software works by going to their help center or looking at the billions of videos on YouTube. In this particular video, we are going to take a look at some of the basics that you will need in order to understand a Notion of Life, which is the ultimate system that we are going to be building in this series. Notion is like a digital Lego set, and just as with the Lego, there's only two constraints. The first one is our imagination, and the second one is the different blocks that we have available to us. Now, inside of Notion here, and this text over here is a block. You can recognize a block in Notion by these 6 dots on the left. And when I click on this, you can see it selects the entirety of the block. Now, were I to say add some more text over here, right? So I'm just going to copy paste some text. I click on the 6 dots. You can see that the block has now become bigger. If I press enter, I generate a new block. And over here, you can see 6 dots. This is a new block, right? So we have 2 separate blocks right above each other. Now, it's very easy inside of Notion to just drag these blocks around. So let's say I have a line of text here that I want to go up. I can simply grab it over here and put it above the other text, or I could even put it a block higher. Now, there are many different blocks inside of Notion, and the way we can access these blocks is by going on a line, press the / key, and then over here we get the entire list of blocks. Now, we're not gonna explore all of these right now. There's a ton of really good content on the internet. Notion also has a very good help center in which you can learn all about these blocks. But for now, we're just going to play around with the basics to see how they work. And for that purpose, on the top here, I made a very tiny page playing around with a few of the different blocks. So the first block that you see over here is a callout. And a callout can be used to call out interesting information. And we can access that by going /callout. And we can click on it, but what we can also do, instead of clicking on it, we can also just simply say callout, enter. And now we have a new callout, and we can add a different emoji if we want to. Maybe we want to point down over here, and just like that, we've created a callout. Now, if we go down here, you can see a few different blocks. This one in here is a heading 1, and that's basically the highest level of a title, right? You also have this in Word, we also have this in Google Docs, we also have this in Markdown, just a regular heading 1. We could also be generating a heading 2, which will be 1 level lower, right? And you can also see it's slightly smaller, and we can also generate a heading 3. Now, instead of typing out heading 3, I can also just simply type H3. H3, enter, created a new header. All right, I'm just going to delete these 2 for now. Down below here, we have a beautiful image of the mountains of love with some explanation on what they exactly are. Over here, I've chosen to put these 2 blocks next to each other, right? So that's also something that we can do. We can actually grab a block and put it next to another one. And like that, we can start creating columns, right? We could also add even one more column, right? Put it right next to each other. And just like that, it's almost like we're designing a web page. But let's say, for example, actually, I don't really like this text being next to the mountain, so I'm just going to grab it and I'm just going to put it right under there. I think this already looks much better. I'm going to add some spacing here because I like spacing. And maybe I just want to resize that image a little bit. And instead of having it on the left, I want to have it right in the center. Actually, this looks really ugly, so I'm just going to reverse that. But This is just to show that you can modify a lot of the content in different ways. Now, once again, we're not going to do all the modifications, but this is just to show you. There's a lot of things we can do with the different blocks. Okay, so over here we have a little divider line. You can add these by doing dash, dash, dash. And then over here we have some toggles, right? This is very helpful if you want to summarize some information, put it right under each other without the page getting all bloated. And in here we have some history on the mountain. In the second toggle, we have a little number list. And in the third one, we just have a few more images. So this is a different way to put a lot of information into a single page. Now, over here, we also have a little table. Maybe we want to add some more quantified information. Maybe we want to have some more structured information. And just like that, we can build ourselves quite a simple, basic page. A few more things to note here is that we can change the color and the styling of some of these elements. So for example, if we want to change the color of our text, we can go here to the 6 dots and we can say, actually, I want this to be blue, right? I want the mountains of love to be blue. What we can also do instead is go slash and simply put the color in here. I'm going to say, I want it to be red or I want it to be green. And what we can also do is actually give it a background. So maybe I want to give it a green background instead of a green foreground, right? So just like that, we can do all these different things with the text. Similar for the callout over here, we can say, hey, I want to have the orange background color, and I actually want the sun to be the emoji. There's many ways that we can manipulate all the different blocks on our page. For now, we're just going to stick to this. Then the last thing I want to show you before we move on to the next part is that you can take a given block and transform it into something else. So let's say, for example, this heading actually should be a heading 2. I can say turn, and then over here it says turn into. I can say turn into heading 2. Additionally, I could just say turn into H2. That would also work. Or H3. That would also work. Right? So we can change the elements and modify them into something else. So those are blocks. Those are the units that we're using on a page to build something in Notion. But then what is a page? Well, the page is basically the blank canvas on which we are building, right? So over here, you can simply add a new page. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to give a title to this page. Then we can also give an icon, right? So let's say we're going to use the mountain emoji. We can add a cover image. I'm just going to put a cover straight from Unsplash. So on this page, once again, we can play with all the different blocks, right? We can just do the same that we did over here. We can drag them around. We can add all this different sort of content to this page. And then in the top right corner, when you go over here, there are some page settings that we can also play around with. And if I go in there, you can see that I can change the font of the page. There's 3 options. I can go to this serif font or to this mono font. I can change the text size of a page. So maybe I want to have smaller text if I want to fit more into a page. And I can change the width of the page. I can either make it full width or I can make it small width. Now there's some other options like adding them to your favorites, duplicating pages, copying the links, sharing them with other people. We're not going to go into all of that now. We can play around with it later. But this is just to show you the page is the canvas inside of Notion on which we build everything. And then the blocks are the units with which we are actually building it. But a page in Notion is not just a page. It is also a folder in a strange way. And this is really the interesting power of Notion, because inside of a page, I can create another page. So let's say I go /page. And then over here, a block that I can add into a page is actually another page. And I'm just going to open that. I'm going to say this page is inside the other page. And once again, we have a clear canvas, right? On this, we can generate all these new blocks again. We can just make things up. But this page is now living inside of the other page. And that's something that we can see right over here. I can just go back to this previous page, and I can then go back into this page. And if I were to go here to the left side on this menu and I would open that up, you can actually see that the one page is nested inside of the other page. And this is very similar to how a folder structure would work on a laptop, because once again, in here, I can create a deeper page, right? And then we can open that one up and we can enter and make an even deeper page. And just like that, we can start creating a folder-like structure. But instead of them being folders in which we just add other folders or documents, they are themselves pages on which we can build a lot of different things, right? So a page is like a canvas, but it's also a folder-like structure in which we can start building our systems. Next up, we are going to cover databases. And I realize that you might think right now, databases sound boring, they sound complex, they sound technical. Why would I be interested in this? Just bear with me for 5 minutes, and I promise that you will get excited about databases. So the first thing that we are going to do is we're going to create a new page over here. We're going to call it our action tracker page. And on this page, we are going to build an action tracker or a to-do list tracker. So the first thing that we're going to do is to create a database. And we do that by pressing /database. And then we're going to pick the inline database. And just like that, we've generated a database. Now I'm going to call this one the action tracker because we're going to track all of our actions in here. And then I'm briefly going to explain to you what this database does. So inside of Notion, databases have two dimensions. We have the rows going from left to right and the columns going from top to bottom. Now, whenever we enter a new page, and in this particular case, it would be a new action item, we do that by pressing this button over here and it gets added as a row. Maybe like bring clothes to cleaner. Now, we want to attach extra information to this particular action item, right? For example, we want to know when to do it and what priority it has, and maybe also where to do it. So there's different types of information that we want to track about this specific entry. That's what we do in the columns, because over here we can add different properties. So I'm going to go over here and say add a new property. And as you can see, there's a whole list of properties that we can add to this particular database. These are all different types of information that we can measure inside of this database. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the select property, and I'm going to call that one priority. And what this property allows me to do is it allows me to create tags that look like this, which I can use multiple times. So I only have to create the tag once, and once it's there, it's part of this database, right? So I can just easily add that over here. Now we can say first priority, but we might also be able to say second priority, right? And then over here I can say, oh, actually this one is second priority. This one's first priority. Actually, this one is third priority. And whenever we type in a new tag here, it is permanently added to this list of potential tags. So I'm going to drag that one over here. Then I'm actually going to change this one, and I'm going to call it action name. So what is the name of our particular action? Now, what else would we want to track inside of our action tracker database? Well, when does the action need to be done? So I'm going to go over here, and I'm actually going to change this existing property. I'm going to go in there, I'm going to say edit property, and I'm changing the type to a date. And the date property, I'm actually going to give that the name of due date, which is the date on which we want to do the action. Now, the date property only allows us to track dates. And if I click on here, it actually opens up this nice little calendar view. So I can say this action item is done for July 9th. This action item might only be due for July 10th. And like that, we can start adding new information. Now, there is one last thing that I want to track in this actions database, and that is whether the action is done or not. So we're once again going to open up these properties. This time I'm going to search for the property, and I'm going to grab the checkbox, which is basically a binary checkbox, which is either ticked or not ticked. And just like that, we have a very simple action database. So I'm just going to add some actions here, write thesis intro, clean the dishes, and practice singing lessons, right? So now we have a nice little action list. And then actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to just duplicate these entries for a little bit to show you what a bigger database would look like. Over here we now have a database with quite a lot of information, but it's very chaotic. There's maybe information on there that we don't need, right? For example, if we tick these boxes, maybe we don't want those action items to still be in this database, and that is why Notion allows us to make filters. And filters are a very powerful feature that make Notion databases really freaking awesome. So what we can do is, over here we can open up this filter panel, and we can basically choose any of the properties that we've added to this database. And let's say, for example, we're going to take this done checkbox, and then it allows us to apply a filter here. So we are going to say that we only want to see action items that have been checked. Right? So I'm going to say only show us action items that have been checked over here. And the moment I press that, all the actions, all the entries that we made that do not meet this requirement are no longer seen inside this view. Now, this doesn't mean they are not in the database, because if I were to change this filter and actually say, show me the unchecked ones, I'm going to see all the unchecked ones. What this allows us to do is it allows us to take the entirety of this database and only show us a very tiny particular part of it. And maybe we want to add another filter. We want to see the unchecked actions that have a due date for, I'm going to say due date is today. And this filter automatically checks what the day is. So today is 9th of July. And then it's only going to show us the action items that are due for today. And like that, we took this very large amount of data and filtered it to only show us the particular thing that we might need for today. Now I'm just going to remove this one for a moment. And then I'm actually going to make a few more of them for July 9th. And if I drag one of these cells over here down, it gets automatically copied into the other cells, as you can see over here. Now I'm going to reapply that filter. I'm going to say due date is today. And I'm actually going to change a few of these priorities. Now, all of these priorities are all over the place. So the second thing that we can do inside of a database is apply a sort. And we do that over here. And this is basically going to help us to order our data. So over here, I'm going to grab the property of priority, and I'm going to say, I want to sort the priority ascending. And you can already see over here, it's neatly ascending in the same direction that is on this list over here. Now, were I to say the priority is descending, that is going to get flipped around. But for now, I'm just going to leave it on ascending. And just like that, we have a beautiful little action tracker list. Whenever something is completed, we can simply remove it from the list by clicking here. And just like that, we've created an action tracker database. Now, another thing that Notion allows us to do is to actually create different views of this particular database and save them. So what I'm going to do over here in the top of this database is I'm going to say, create a new view. And now it's asking me, what sort of view do I want to create? Because we can use this standard table layout that we just used, but we could also create a board, for example, which would look something more like this, right? A board from left to right, the classic Kanban board that you might know from tools like Trello. But we could also say, actually, I want it to be a timeline, or I want it to be a calendar, or I want it to be a list, which is sort of like a cleaner version of the table. Or maybe I want it to be a gallery, in which we can make a beautiful gallery with all of our database entries. Right? So we can create different views using different layouts, but also save different filters inside of this particular view. So let me give you an example, right? We're going to go back into this standard table layout just for simplicity's sake. And in this particular view, I actually want to see all the action items that are due for tomorrow. So I'm going to say filter, due date, and the due date is going to be tomorrow. I'm going to once again give it a dynamic filter, meaning this one changes automatically. I'm going to say due date is tomorrow. I'm going to rename this view and actually going to call it tomorrow's actions. I'm going to call this one that we're just in, going to call it today's actions. And just like that, you can see we now have two different views of this same database. If I go to this view, I only see tomorrow's actions. If I go to this view, I only see today's actions, right? And like this, we can create many different views for one particular database. Now, I will give you an example from the Notion of Life system. So I'm going to go into the database collection zone, which is where all of our original databases live. I'm going to open up the action tracker in which all of our action items live. And then over here, you can see all these different views. These are all different views of this same exact database, right? So for example, this is the view with all the action items for today. This is a view in which we can easily capture, boom, add a new action item. And just like that, we have a ton of different views because we use this one database and we show it in many different places. So now you might be wondering, but that is a little clunky because then every time I need to go into this database, I need to search through all these views, and that takes a lot of time and effort. That is very true, and that is why Notion has another really cool feature. And just giving you a heads up, I'm going to say that Notion has cool features a lot because I'm a big Notion fan, but this feature is really amazing. So let's go back to this action tracker page that we just created. This database over here is our original database. But what we can do inside of Notion is we can actually create a linked version of this database. And what that means is that we create a sort of second interface into this same database. So I'm just going to go down here. I'm going to say slash, and I'm going to call it a linked view of database. And when I do that, it now asks me to select a database source. So it's going to ask me to select the original database that I want to draw information from. Now, in this particular case, I want to draw the information from the database that we just created, this action tracker over here. So I'm going to say, grab the information from that action tracker. Then it's going to ask me, do I want to copy one of these existing views that we just made right over there? For now, I'm going to say, no, I just want to have a new empty view. And as you can see, over here, we have the same database that we have over here. Now, were I to make a change in this database, you will see that that same change is also happening in the linked version of that database. And this is also true the other way around. If I were to uncheck the box here, it is also being unchecked there. So this is sort of like a clone of the other database, but they're still communicating with each other. It's just a different interface to this same main database. And I could put this one on a separate page. I could take this database, I could put it on a separate page, have just this particular view, and it's still linking back to the database over here. And this is really, really powerful because it allows us to create one central place in which we're capturing and organizing and processing all of our information, but we can have all these interfaces in different places to communicate with this one central database. And that is really the power of linked databases. Now, there is one more feature that I want to show you that really makes databases super duper powerful inside of Notion. And that feature is called Relational Databases. And what this allows us to do is to basically take two separate databases and let them communicate with each other. Now, I'm going to show you a little visual over here as an example of what that looks like. Suppose we would have a meal database and an ingredients database. And inside of this meal database, we store all of the different recipes that we have. And then inside of this ingredients database, we store all of the different ingredients that we have. Now, normally, these would be two separate databases. They wouldn't know that the other one exists. But what we can do is we can actually relate these to each other. We can make them become friends. And once these databases know of each other's existence, we can start relating certain entries to each other. So I could say this mac and cheese meal that I have in this database is actually related to olive oil and to cheese, because both cheese and olive oil go into this mac and cheese. Or, for example, the Greek salad entry, right? That's an entry in the meals database, is also related to olive oil, right? So we can have one entry in one database related to multiple other entries. And like that, we can take information from these different places and relate them to each other. Now, let's have a look at a practical example of how this can be used, right? So we go back into our Notion page here, and we're actually going to create a second database. And this one we are going to call our project tracker, right? So we have one database for tracking all of our actions, but we also have a database for tracking all of our projects. I'm just going to call this project Record YouTube Series. And over here we have record YouTube video, edit YouTube video, maybe even create thumbnail. Now, at this point, these two databases don't know that the other one exists. So what I'm going to do is over here, I'm going to add a property. And the property that I'm going to add is called relation. And by doing this, it will ask me to which other database do you want to create a relationship. And what we want to do is we want to take this project tracker and relate it to our action tracker. And so we're going to say this action tracker. And then over here, I'm going to say that I want to see this relationship on both of these databases. So when I press this button over here and then add this relation, what you will see is that, boom, over here, this project tracker is related to the action tracker, but the action tracker is also related to the project tracker. And I'm going to show you what we can do now. Over here, we can press this cell. And when I press that, it's basically going to show me all of the entries that are inside of this action tracker database. So I click over here and I can see all these action items that we have inside of this database. And I'm actually going to say, okay, the project is record YouTube series. So one of the actions is edit YouTube video. And another one is record YouTube video. And over here, you can now see part of this project is doing these actions. But in this other database, you can also see this action is related to this particular project. So like that, we can use these databases to communicate with each other. And then once again, what we can do is say, I'm going to create a new view, and I'm going to call this view project related actions. I'm going to create that view. I'm going to give it a filter. I'm going to say the project tracker has to contain record YouTube series. And now over here, I only see all of the actions that are related to this project of creating YouTube series. So like this, we can let databases communicate with each other and then also filter the information in such a way that it only shows us the information from that particular database. Now, this is quite complex. You don't have to understand this straight away, but just know that this is a feature that we use a lot in A Notion of Life. So now you at least have a basic understanding of how it works. Last thing about databases, and then we move on, is that every entry inside of a database is actually a page in and of itself. So were I to open this particular entry, this in itself is a page. And I can once again build an entire new system. I can build anything inside of here just like I could do with a regular page. So databases are both these two-dimensional data structures, but there's also this third dimension where we can once again go into it. And like this, we can layer information on top of each other and create all these complex structures and systems. The last thing that we are going to discuss in this Notion Basics video is keyboard shortcuts inside of Notion, because we can navigate with a mouse, but it's much faster to navigate with a keyboard. So let's just go back into our Basics of Notion page. And I'm actually going to show you some of my favorite keyboard shortcuts. Now, the team at Notion have done a really good job at creating many different keyboard shortcuts. I'm just going to show you the ones that I use the most. I'll drop the link down in the description to a list with all the shortcuts. So let's just have a look right now. First of all, we can toggle between dark and light mode by using Shift, Command on Mac or Control on Windows, L. And for all of the different keyboard shortcuts, it's always Command is Control on Windows. So whenever I say Command is Control on Windows, just so you know. And once again, Shift, Command, L, we toggle it back into dark mode. I personally always use dark mode. I designed a Notion of Life specifically for dark mode, but you can use whatever mode you want. The next keyboard shortcut is Command P, with which we open up the search function. And I'm going to go back into this action tracker page that we created earlier because I want to show you the keyboard shortcut for opening a full page. Because whenever we open a page in the database, the standard way of opening is like this. It's going to fill half our screen, but if we press Command Enter, it will open up the full screen. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but I want to go back to the previous page. That is perfectly fine. We press Command, left bracket, to go to the previous page, left bracket, and it's taking us back to this original page. Now, quick little tip, Command left bracket also works in your browser, so whenever you want to go previous page, just use that keyboard shortcut. Then, of course, we have the slash shortcut for opening up our basic blocks. So often we can use abbreviations to quickly generate a block. So instead of heading 3, I can simply say H3, or I can simply say call, I can simply say tab. So I can just use the few first letters to create a particular blog. And then, of course, we have the standard things like a toggle, numbered list, bullet list, and some others. So these are just a few of the keyboard shortcuts that I use a lot of the time. Like I said, you can find more of them in the description. So let's recap. Notion is a tool that allows us to build personalized systems that solve our specific problems. We do this by using blocks, interactive pages, and databases. Now, especially the databases are very powerful because they allow us to capture large quantities of information, filter them in different ways, and basically build a system that scales with us over time. We could literally have 1,000 pieces of information and still structure them in a productive way. If this video was valuable to you and you want to support me, then please like and subscribe down below. Additionally, enrollment for a Notion of Life is currently open and you can find more information by going to the link in the description. In the next video, we'll explore the 7 core principles that form the backbone of the Notion of Life system. It's going to be a super valuable one, so you don't want to miss it. For now, I thank you for your time and wish you a wonderful day. Peace.